Hello and welcome to Teacher Tech for Bedford College Group. In this video, I just wanted to go through some of the use cases for Padlet. So I've done an introductory video on Padlet itself, how to set one up, how to change all of the settings and format. And in this video, I just wanted to talk about a number of different ways that you can use Padlet. So I've narrowed it down to just 5, although there are multiple ways that you can use it. And feel free to add some comments if you've got some other ideas of how you could use Padlet in your classroom, and make the comment section a bit of a discussion forum. What are some of the ideas you have, or some of the ways perhaps that you've used it that you'd like to share with everyone else? I'm just going to go through what I think are probably the most common uses. So I'm going to start with using it for a portfolio of evidence. So if you wanted learners to create their own Padlets where they were keeping evidence of the work that they're doing, Padlet is a great way to do that. And so the way I would suggest you set that up, I'm just deleting some of the comments there, is that you change the format to shelf. And shelf gives you a range of columns, and what you can do is then just add a header to each column that represents the element of evidence that is in that column for their portfolio. So if they were, for example, doing a portfolio of evidence on workshop safety, so they might put some evidence around basic health and safety practices. Maybe you had them do a quiz, or they had to do a workshop review where they reviewed the health and safety. You might then look at paperwork that they've had to do along the way. So what are some of the evidence of paperwork that they've had to do within the workshop, whatever that might be. You could also then, maybe they've had to create a video of health and safety practice, and have some photographs to add to that of them actually in the workshop practicing safely. And then within each of those columns, they can add their own evidence. So they can add their photographs, they can add videos, they can add documentation, Word documents, PDFs, you name it. One of the things you'll want to make sure that they do when they set up a portfolio like this is to turn on comments. This way you can add comments to their Padlet, which can be your evidence of marking. Because they own the page, they can delete comments and things like that, so you'd want to keep a snapshot of it or have some other feedback sheet that you're posting or adding to their Padlet as you go. But once they've created it, they can just share it with you by adding you as a member. All they need is your username, they can add it to you, and then on your dashboard, you'll just see it among your shared Padlets. Just make sure they turn on comments and even give you permission to write to their Padlet, because remember, you can do that within that shared. When you look at privacy, you can look at what permission you want to have permission to write to it, so you can then add their feedback sheet straight up to their Padlet when you're ready. Another use case for Padlet that I find really compelling is this idea that I've seen used in a number of art and design classes and photography classes, where Padlet is used as sort of a critique group, where learners will post their work to the Padlet and invite feedback from the rest of the group. And again, columns could work really well for this. And instead of just elements of evidence, we just give each student, Margie, I don't know why Margie, just Margie. We could give each student a column. They post all of their work into that column. Again, we've turned comments on, so they just post their work to that column and other students can make comments on it. Ooh, I think this is really effective. I like the way you framed the image here. Those sorts of things, whatever might be useful within your course. You may also find some other formats quite useful for that. I think Canvas could be really useful for that, where you get a learner to create their own Padlet and link different elements of an idea together, or elements of their work together in some way, might be really useful. Grid format does something similar to Shelf, where it takes all your posts and just kind of snaps them to a grid. So again, this could be useful for a crit group. Nicely organized. Learners can just add their name to it. You can see my name is already here because I have that turned on. So any comments that are added, we know who made them. Any work that's posted, we know who it's from. The third way that you might use this that I want to go through is called Jigsaw Learning, right? So this idea that I'm going to split my group up and give each element of the group, or each mini group, if you will, a different task. And if I just use an example from when I taught history for this, because it fits really nicely, just follow along with me. So in A-level history, when I taught the American Civil Rights Movement, my students might get a question on to what extent did individuals or the work of individuals improve the lives of African Americans between 1945 and 1968. Sounds like a really easy question, but actually it's really complicated, because in order to get the analysis into that question, you also had to compare the work of individuals and the impact of individuals to the work of the presidents, to the work of Congress, to the work of the Supreme Court and the impact of the Supreme Court. So what I would do is I'd split the group up and I'd say, okay, group one, you're going to look at the impact of the presidents, right? There are 4 presidents during this period. Look at each one. What did they do? Just a brief synopsis, and go more in depth as to what was the impact, right? How did it impact the lives of African Americans? Group 2, you're going to look at Congress, which we can spell correctly. And group 3, you're going to look at the Supreme Court. And group 4 is going to look at the crux of the question. And I might make this the largest group, right? Because there were a lot of individuals here. We've got Rosa Parks, we've got Martin Luther King, we've got A. Philip Randolph, and the list goes on. So I might have quite a number of individuals to look at. And so they're going to break that down and again talk about impact. So then by the end of the lesson, we have this really great resource which details the impact of the presidents, the impact of Congress, the impact of the Supreme Court, and the impact of individuals. That drives learners to really start making comparisons between different groups and gets into the analysis and evaluation, which many of them really struggle with. Another format that could work really well for this kind of idea is Canvas, where now I can draw connections between different ideas. So again, if we're sticking with this example from the American Civil Rights Movement, so I've got the Supreme Court, which I've posted over here. Then I've got Congress, which I've posted over here. And within each one, I can then connect to another post. So I can change the color of this post, and then I'll go ahead and draw a connection, and I can add a label to that connection. So, and say these two ideas were related, and then I get this nice little label in between them, which is really useful. All right, stage 4, or case 4, if you will, is a poster presentation, and this is where you might get learners to use Padlet as essentially a format for their own presentations to a group, where they have gone out, they've done research, they've put some evidence together, and now they can create this wall and a sort of dynamic poster presentation where they can add YouTube videos to it, they can add images, they can add text, and then when they're presenting to the rest of the group, Padlet just becomes this tool where when they want to show something, they can just click on it, bring it up, talk about it, and move on to the next thing. They can show the video straight from here. Everything's just in one place. And I think that can be a really useful way to do a presentation. You can give them open range as to which format they want to use. A canvas might work really well here. The basic wall, they might want to organize it more in shelf mode if they're comparing different ideas. That can be quite open, really. Again, it's really useful if they're doing that sort of thing, that they turn on comments so you can add comments to it, and that they share it with you, because then maybe you can put together a Padlet that links to all of the other Padlets, or you can put links to them up on Moodle to share so everybody has access to that work. The 5th case that I wanted to look at is what I call curated content. And again, any format could work for this. Basic wall could work. I think shelf could work really well. I think leaving it open is quite useful, but curated content is this idea that I want students to go away and do research on something, but I want to make sure that what they're finding is reliable, that it's good quality stuff. And again, if I give an example from history here, let's say if I wanted students to go away and do some research on the Holocaust, right? The final solution. I don't want them to come back with Holocaust deniers who claim that it never happened. The gas chambers never existed. That's rubbish. So what I will do is go away and find a number of articles, links to reliable websites, interviews with Holocaust survivors, those sorts of things, and put them all on a Padlet and say, go at it, explore whatever content you want, and come back and use that research in the work that I've asked you to do. That way I know what they're looking at is reliable and that they're not coming back with stuff that just isn't true. It's a useful exercise, and I think it allows you to do some kind of both-sidism as well, where you can do a little bit of controversial content on there, but it's not content that's completely out of left field and nuts. So curated content is a good way to do it. Make sure it's rich enough for students to explore and look at both sides of an issue, but that it's good stuff. There are a number of other things that you might do on a Padlet. Some of these formats are really good for things like establishing a discussion forum. Stream is really good for that, where you might put up a controversial article and then say, do you agree or disagree, but require that they provide evidence for their answer. Number of ways really that you could use it. If you've got any other ideas, just post them in the comments below and make that a bit of a discussion forum. What are some ways that you've used it in the classroom or could think of that you might use it? Well, that's it for me. 5 ways that you can use Padlet in your classroom starting tomorrow. I hope you found this useful. Be sure to have fun.